I lose hours in my hustle, chasing half the muster now. Late for dinners, missed I love yous, I'm not proud. Freeze up in the doorway, plans keep spinning in my head. Feeling sorry for myself, blaming everyone, wishing I was dead. Phone lights up and I disappear. Scroll the drama to numb the fear. Every later cost me hours, days and years of my life. I wanna claw back my minutes, I can't get back tonight. Hey, time thief, I see you taking what was meant for me. Stealing memories, chances, love I never get to keep. No more silent surrender, eyes wide open, I choose to be here for the people I love, here for every heartbeat. Love lives in the present, fear camps in the future tense. Pain lives in the past and I'm done living behind that fence. Hey, time thief, you're evolved, hidden yesterdays, can't keep its rust. I'm spending every second like it's priceless, 'cause it is to us. Addictions and avoidance drown the deep.
So here we are, we're back. And guess who's back with me? Andrew's back. He's taking his time off and he's joining us again here. And as you can see, Andrew, I've been a little busy while you've been gone. I had Chris Singleton as a co-host and had a good time with him, and had to also produce a poem in there, put that up. But you were missed, and it's great to see you again. And welcome back to Emotional Algebra with Dr. E.
And it's great to be back, Dr. E. And I see you not only have been busy with those things, but how about this song that you're playing here right now? Wow. This might be the best one you've made so far, in my opinion. I happen to like this rock genre, but
That's quite a compliment. That's quite a compliment. I know you're a music aficionado there. So.
I'm like a rock.
So
music.
Well, this whole concept came to me one day. I came up. My daughter is sorry to ratchet out, Grace, but she's notorious. Runs late, and she was doing her makeup and getting ready to go out. And she was behind, and she was rushing. And I said, Grace, I'm going to create a song for you called "The Time Thief." And then I really started thinking about that concept, and I thought, what are all the different ways that we lose time in our life? And this song is going to be posted. As you know, I do multiple genres. There's a singer-songwriter version coming out. There's a more of a Latin version. I also created a song called "The Tale of Lark and the Time Thief," which is more of an allegory. It tells the story of the time thief in both a reggae style as well as a Irish folktale style. And then there's the story of the time thief, which is a different way. But I really wanted people to have the ability to listen to this in a way that might speak to them, that might reach them, and see that every minute to me is precious. It is precious to us, and too often we don't see the power that these small little items in it have in our life to affect how we spend our time and where we spend our time. And I commented so many times while you were gone saying you were taking the time with your family. You wanted to appreciate the end of summer and have that quality time with your kids and your wife and making sure you were making memories. And I really appreciate that and applaud that, and was happy again that I'm still able to run this show as clumsily as I might have, but to keep it going while you were gone.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, and thanks for bringing me back in this way. As you say, like, time is so important. I feel it as a parent. I got 3 kids. I mentioned that before on the podcast, and it's important to just get some time with them. And hey, also Chris Singleton, great guy, by the way. Loved when we hosted him on the podcast. So I know that I bet that was a good time for you guys to get back and do some stuff together. So
Yeah, was talking about baseball and the end of the pennant season, and then a lot of the pressures that go in, and some of the psychological factors with sports, and especially in baseball that come up. And so that was a fun episode to do. I always enjoy spending time with Chris.
Yeah, he's a great guy, an interesting guy, and I know you two are good friends. So I just hope that was some time well spent. The two of you doing that together.
Speaking of time thieves, that was definitely not a time thief.
Not a time thief. Yeah, so that's the topic for today. Interestingly, time thieves, and you've gone and really explored this concept, in greater depth than just making a song about it. As you said, you were telling me a little bit before we started recording. It almost seems like you're working on a concept album with this whole time thief thing. It reminded me of like Pink Floyd, The Wall. You ever see The Wall by Pink Floyd?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's a whole thing that you've got going on. So
yeah. Hey, maybe I should dive a little deeper into that. And it sounds like a good concept to really carry on that idea of time.
There's a lot to it, I think. There is a lot to it. But you always seem to find these things that, I feel like people know on some level, but that you find that deeper level, and explore it on a more, just on a more in-depth level, and probably figure out how it's all affecting our lives, maybe even under our daily radar,
Yeah, and I think that's what I really try to do with everybody I work with, is really take a 360 view at what's going on in their life, with what's going on with these concepts, with whether it's looking at sports or politics or time or family, vacations, all these things we've had shows about, to me, are things I really want people to take a deeper look at, not just assume they get it, but to look at some of these pieces the same way we're looking at emotional algebra in terms of the different variables that are affecting people, and and how we're feeling in our day-to-day life, and we just often gloss over. And that's what we'll touch on, in today's shows, with some of the time thieves that you and I wanted to help people to think of and look at.
Absolutely. And so to get started, why don't you sort of give a definition of what a time thief is? I feel like it's somewhat obvious, but maybe it's not as obvious as everyone may think it is.
Well, it's the things that we're not aware of the importance of time. And, I think in the song, what I loved about the song, and I added to all the songs in the concept, was that idea that fear lives in the future. So it says fear camps in future tense in that first song, and the one you heard, and pain lives in the past. I'm done living behind that fence. A lot of people get caught in their pain, and they're stuck in that pain. And we'll touch on different concepts of pain that people get caught in. And love lives in the present. So if we really stay present in this moment, and we see these moments in time, and we appreciate, some people might even find podcasts as time thieves. I would hope not, because my goal of the podcast is to really, like I said, help people be more aware of how to make the most of your time, how to make the most of your life. So it's when we're losing track of what's in this moment, and there's so many things that take that we just miss, and we can't get back. And that's where it talks about that vault stuck in the past. In this song, it talks about that the time thief can keep his vault with the rust, and I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's
the lyrics of that song are really great. And it's cool that you show them. I feel like it's good for people to see each word as it's being sung, and so forth. So you can grasp some of those concepts. So, all right. So that's it. So it's how you're losing track of things, and how you're maybe getting distracted from more important things in life. What's your top time thief, Dr. E?
My top time thief is phones and media. That's really, to me, what I see. I was just on a bourbon trail tour with my nephews and brother-in-law, and had a great time, and really was even more aware because of these songs and my awareness of this concept of time thieves. And I was really mindful of how often so many of us in the van rides, wherever we were going, we're all still flipping and scrolling and checking in, all the things we can do. We can check in on work, and again, these are things we'll each touch on a little more, but all these things that we got caught in playing games. I'm famous for solitaire, for my zone out time, or my Wordscapes game that I play and stuff, that it's like every day now I've got to get that daily goal, and I'm working on shifting that. But it feeds those dopamine receptors. It is that feeling. And even on the bourbon trail, the fun thing about that was that none of us got hammered. It wasn't about getting hammered. It was about spending time together. It was about tasting the uniqueness of each of these bourbons, the same way I like mezcals and the same way I like to taste tequilas and wines, is I'm in the moment of the taste and picking out those unique tastes and really enjoying that. Same way when I grill or cook out, and the different flavors I use, blackened seasonings and different types of wood, and how the different types of wood in my smoker are pushing. So I mention all these things because be in the moment in whatever you're doing, whether it's eating or drinking or talking or communicating, and put the phone down.
Yeah.
Turn it off. Like we put it on do not disturb. That's important enough for us while we're doing the podcast to put it on do not disturb. Why not put on do not disturb while you're eating dinner or while you're spending time with friends talking?
Yeah, but let me ask you this. Can't you, in a very innocent way, fall right back into a distraction? Like I'm just going to guess here. Maybe you guys, while you were doing it, took a group photo, like a selfie of maybe with a shot glass or something, or around a barrel. And then all of a sudden You've got your phone out and you're looking at your screen again. Even if you've put it on do not disturb and consciously tried to avoid that, you're trying to make the memory.
I was still had my phone. I mean, these are lessons I pick up and learn, because even the first night they were all playing poker and they were playing a $20 buy-in. And I'm like, I don't like how I play when I play for money. I'll play for fun. And they're like, you gotta have some skin in the game. I'm like, I just don't like that feeling I get. So what did I do? I avoided the feeling. One thing I teach people not to do, but I thought about this that night because A, I was tired, excuse, time loss, time thief. B, I didn't want to pay the $20 to really be present and have that time with them, time thief. And then I just went to bed, missed out on the laughter, the things like that, time thief. So then the next night they were playing another game, and it was a $5 play. And I'm like, and I thought about it. I'm like, I'm going to be present with them. I'm going to be here with them. And I had a great time. We were joking and laughing and had a really great time. My brother-in-law, he didn't play, but he sat at the table with us. And we really appreciated the presence of everybody who was on that trip, was sitting around that table and just enjoying that connection. Because I haven't spent time with all these guys together, some of them ever. And this time was time I spent with them for the first time. My two nephews on my one older sister's side, I haven't seen them together for years. So it's capturing those moments.
Now, you just said something a couple of times there that I think is interesting. You said you referred to sleep as a time thief. Like you went to bed, you're like, time thief. Now I've actually had that sort of feeling before, right? Not necessarily thinking of it as a time thief, but I'm like, I wish I didn't have to spend 6, 7, 8 hours on sleep. Is sleep a time thief? Because then the other thing is, but I'm like, well, I need to, because then if I'm not well rested, then I'm going to maybe be crabby or just not able to be as present as I can be the next day. So you need the sleep. Is it a time thief though, too? Can it be?
Great question, because I think at times, no, it isn't, because sometimes staying awake, it's are you present or not? I recognize that I wasn't present at that time. And yes, I was tired. We all had traveled all day. We drove down to get down to Kentucky from Columbus, Ohio. And it's a balance there. But at that time, I recognized that what did I do? I went up, I went to bed, I found something to watch on my phone to chill out with. And I probably could have kind of done that time prep time to go to sleep, even up there, and not turned on a show. I could have just gone, okay. So I recognize that was me distancing myself. And I'm not saying that some people don't need their wind down time. They don't need their quiet time. So if you know you need that, yeah, take advantage of that. I'm just looking at knowing me and the choices I made and why I made those choices. So just, it's about awareness.
Now, what if you go and sleep till like 11:30 in the morning, like almost till noon? Does it become a time thief when you're just sleeping your day away?
I sometimes do look at that. Sometimes sleep is required, necessary,
Yes.
and when you're spending these times with family, like, our daughter as a teenager sleeps in a lot. She needs her sleep, and sometimes you need your sleep so you can really be more present. Well, I think we want to be aware of times we can't get back, times that aren't everyday times. Those are the times to be aware. Can I get a little less sleep here to really seize that moment? Tempus fugit, and time flies, and carpe diem, seize the day. Latins had some great sayings that have been a part of our history and a part of our present, and hopefully be a part of our future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Irony is, I named one of my side businesses Carpe Diem, and that was one of our businesses that my wife and I have together. That's all about investing in things that are going to help to build our future. And I called it that. It could a double entendre is carp was C-A-R-P, as in fish, and then diem, not the way carpe diem spelled,
Right.
but it's really a way that I look at that business is, let's see some opportunities that we can make some investments in so that we don't have to work our lives away, and we can have residual incomes and things like that that can help us do the things we want to do to be more present in the moment, see the world, spend time together, all those pieces.
Right. Some passive income. Well, that's a great segue, Dr. A, because I think this was on both of our lists. We kind of created some lists of time thieves, and work was both. We both listed that. I think our lists were a little different, but that one we both had. Yeah. And so that's another one that's almost like sleep. You do have to work. You have to make money. You have to be able to live. But how much is it a time thief? Where's the kind of the balance between, the requirement and the thievery?
Well, and nobody ever said on their deathbed, I wish I would have spent more time at work. I know when I was 20, 21, my dad often, his work week was 6 hours a week, often leave the house at 8:30, come home at 7 at night. He was, an executive at a plastic molding company, and he worked a lot and missed out on a lot of my plays, activities, Boy Scouts, Pinewood Derbies, all those things, sports activities, that part of me wished that he was there. And when I was one of my last summers home, he used to call me on Saturdays and said, hey, let's meet for lunch. And we had really great times there because he recognized, remember my history, my brother died when I was 8. And we had spent time together as a family after that for a bit. And then life picked up. And when I was 20 and we talked about how I felt about him being gone all the time, he said, I felt I needed to provide a life for you. And that was what I felt I needed to do. I so wish I could have that time back. I said, I regret those things that I missed, those times that I missed, the soccer games, the football games, and concerts and things. I just didn't know, what other options I had, because he often lived with that fear inside of, what if I don't have this job? Or what if I think sometimes that quiet underlying fear, remember, fear lives in the future, says, what if somebody else can do my job better than I can? What if somebody else takes my job? I know that I used to work hours and hours. And before my daughter was born, my wife and I were on our laptops till 9 or 10 at night, getting emails done and doing other work. And my wife struggles with that in her job and career and time. So I think what we want to do is look at our culture and our cultural expectations, because I think that's part of this idea of what really feeds our time thieves, our cultural attitudes and beliefs. So we have to look at cultural change, our drive for what we think we can do to make our lives better for us, for our kids. For me, I would have felt like I would have better quality of life as my dad was around more, because I would have felt like I was important to him. Yeah. I grew up thinking I wasn't as important. And I know you spend time with all your kids in their sports. You ran the I think the 5K with your
5K,
daughter,
yes.
and have all these great memories. And I love that. I try to do that with my daughter. Why? I still recognize the times I missed out on that I wish I could have spent with her.
Yeah. I mean, we all miss out on times. What do you think about ever since the pandemic? Well, the pandemic certainly changed how much people went to work, actually physically went into an office. Now that has been rolling back dramatically since in the 5 years since the pandemic happened. But for some people, a lot of people still have some hybrid work arrangement still going. That's got to help on some level, at least being at home where you're closer to your kids and maybe see them and talk to them in between meetings or whatever. Right. Do you think that when you're talking culturally, should we be adopting that instead of trying to force everyone back to the 5-day a week in the office model?
We'll even look at that idea of the 4-day week work. They've adopted that in some other countries. And I think that's a great way. And even I have a buddy of mine who now works for another news network that it's a foreign news network he works for, that they work 40 hours a week, no more. They're not allowed to be called. And he had worked for another major news network in the country, but he loves it because he's not taxed. He's not called in. He doesn't have to spend all those extra hours that he missed his daughter growing up in many ways. Yeah. And I think he recognizes those time thieves, and his quality of life is better. His health is better. I think his emotional life is better. His marriage is all these things that have made a difference that we want to look at in our lives, that really have to do with if we didn't fall into the fear of what if I lose my job, or what if I'm replaceable, or because so many people, we've been taught and we've grown up, this culture says, work is mandatory, living is optional. And that absolutely should be in reverse to me. Yeah.
It's hard to do that though, and I think I know who you're talking about, and I know him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he's got a much better arrangement. It's actually it's envious, and it's a good, at least somebody out there has put in a little bit of thought into how the work schedule can be approached in a more, probably really to say, humane way. Because I know exactly what he's talking about, constantly being on at all hours. That is super stressful.
Yeah, I know we had that episode on side hustles, and I think side hustle could be a time thief, or it may not be a time thief, because we have to look at what are we working towards. I know that I talked to you about a new kind of side hustle I have right now, and I've got a couple of them, helping other friends of mine trying to get a business going, as well as trying to get another business going. And I'm looking at what is the possibility of this investment in time now to create, again, a residual income, or an additional way that I can be more present in the important things in my life? Or does this add to the quality of other people's lives? And that's a lot of what my emphasis is on in life, is how I can create quality in other people's lives. Now, Andrew, another time thief I did want to bring up, it's a very powerful one, is addiction. Because to me, that is a huge, huge time thief that we see it's so much of an epidemic in so many different ways in our culture.
And are you talking mostly about substance addiction, or are we talking about all types of addiction? Because I think some of what's on my list could veer into the addiction territory, although it's not particularly substance, like drugs or alcohol.
Yes, we have drug and alcohol addictions. We have exercise addictions. We have addictions to work. We have, sex addictions. We have, all these different things that we do, that the addiction is often about pain living in the past. So the addiction in the present is really trying to avoid pain in the past and even numb our fears of the future. So it fully is not living in the present. And I think that's what we want to realize, is when we hide from our feelings of shame and guilt, and this is now walking into another level of addiction, is what do addictions do? Is addictions are often about emotion. So fears about worry, or feelings of worry and fear and concern. Those are the ones that live in the future, things that haven't happened yet, whether it's about losing a job or is everybody going to see I'm an absolute failure and a screw up. And, I know that that's been a major time thief for me that I lived in denial of, that pushed me into my, work addiction or having to take the phone calls and the things that I've done, even maybe after a stressful day, coming home and having a couple glasses of wine or things that, yes, it's relaxing, it tastes good, I enjoy it. And I also recognize that, why am I doing that? Am I trying to numb the pain or numb the fears? And I think in some ways, if I'm being honest with myself, yes, it is in some ways about getting some distance and a little numbness there. And as I said, our views of emotions of pain, failure, shame, guilt, overwhelm. And if you continue on in the song I wrote, every one of the Time Thief song, I talked about our cultural views of those emotions hierarchically and changing them to being for the purpose they serve. So for failure, saying it's time to learn. Stupid, saying, hey, you've experienced multiple failures. Let's change this. Let's see it differently. Overwhelmed says, back up and look at all these things that you feel are beating you up and seize the moment in today to resolve and solve rather than just numbing them and running from them.
Yeah, I feel like the substance addictions they're also a bit of escapism too. You're trying to just escape from your reality, like you're saying, things that you've, numbing pain from the past, escaping from your future fears, even escaping from the present in some ways, I guess, because of both of those things.
Yeah. And there are a lot of expectancies that come with those addictions. But what I always say is that the addiction becomes often that person's friend, and they want to keep that friend. The addiction almost becomes another being living inside of the addict that says, come on, don't leave me. You need me. And that's where we want to see, where are we really living? Are we living inside of ourselves and caught by our own beliefs and attitudes? Are we really embracing what we can learn from those so that we can live in this life of emotion, learn from what we're here to learn from, to appreciate that love in the present and plan for experiencing more powerful, positive experiences into the future? Because we see a lot of hate right now. And that hate is protective. It pushes us away from things we feel have caused us pain, are causing us pain, and or could cause us pain. But how we're using it hierarchically is to push opportunities away, opportunities to learn, opportunities to understand, opportunities to embrace. And I think that we want to see the power of hate, that hate has become a major time thief because it resists seeking understanding, communion, connection, and seizing that opportunity to love everyone rather than just the few we feel agree with us.
Yeah. I mean, hate is just so unproductive too. I mean, it's a thief of, it's probably a thief of more things than just time,
The way it's used in our hierarchical culture, it absolutely is a thief, because it doesn't, the hatred from a hierarchical standpoint never wants to be resolved. You keep it as a scorecard. You keep it as a barrier, as a wall. And that is absolutely not why it was created. It is there to help us to seek collective understanding, self-understanding, along with the anger, the vengeance. Hatred with vengeance combined hierarchically often has to seek retribution and power over and cause pain perfectly to others. And that's why I think we really want to understand more about what forgiveness is really about, which are some recent songs I released, a series of songs called I Am Forgiveness, and what forgiveness is really about in that, and trying to teach that.
Yep. Okay. So addiction, people I think would definitely probably think that is a huge time thief. Hate, people may not have put their finger on that in the way that you just did, but that clearly is one when you describe it the way you just did. What else? What else you got, Dr. E?
Well, I think grudges are partly hatred is a part of grudges that we hold. So we want to recognize the grudges that we hold on to and why. And grudges are about protection. Grudges are about having a long memory and making sure we hold on to that, which keeps us. Grudges are held in the past. They're used in the present, and they're also forecasted into the future, because we want to be right. Often when we form a grudge, we feel we're right about something. And if somebody hasn't atoned to our expectations, then often we get an idea that I've got to keep that grudge and hold on to that. And I think that, another one to move on is grief. And grief can become a huge time thief. And I wanted your thoughts on that, Andrew, on if you've seen that in that way.
So I would not have thought of that as a time thief, because it seems to me like, depending on what you're grieving, but I'm assuming you're grieving something substantial, like the loss of a loved one, death, something along those lines. Maybe maybe a divorce or something really weighty in life, and it almost is like you don't have a choice. I feel like some of these things that we're talking about, like addiction to a substance, you do have a choice. You make a choice to take a drink or use a drug or something. But if someone dies, like, that's not your choice, and you have no choice but to grieve if that's someone you cared for.
I absolutely agree with you. And there are what I call demand characteristics of certain situations. And I do want to do an episode in the future. We'll do an episode in the future on grief. But to give a little dive into this, is the demand characteristic of a loss. Any loss is going to be sadness that lets us normally feel pain. It can be guilt in the things we didn't do, the time lost, recognizing those time thieves. I think so many people at funerals say, I wish I would have. I wish I would have spent more time. It's teaching me to spend more time with my family and appreciate the moments. And then often, as we talked about in time, those times fall back. But I feel like often people in our culture hold on to grief because they feel guilt and shame and failure about the things they didn't do, the things they wish they would have said, the things they wish what they would have done. And that still keeps that person from living in the present. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked people when working on grief with them, would the person who graduated from life, as I call it, want you to live with the regrets and live with the pain and live in the sadness for years and years? I know that I held on to my grief about the loss of my brother from when I was 8. Well, all of my regrets, my guilts, my shames, my wishes and thoughts it should have been me that left instead of him. So I wasn't living in the present. I was living in all these fears of who I felt I was supposed to be and the pains of loss in the past. And I've had people literally in my office in 1 hour of talking about this shift and transform their whole view of grief and pain. So I always say we hold on to our pain and sometimes our grief as long as we need to. Now, are there stages to grief that have been documented? Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize those. Well, I think we want to look at, would the person who loved us, who now left us, does that change? Do they really cease to exist? Now, different belief systems might say different things. I absolutely believe that person exists beyond the veil of this body and that they do not want us to carry that pain and loss and grief. They're saying, live in this moment. And that's where I created that song we talked about on the AI episode, music episode, called Transformed, that helped that person change the whole way to let me love you how I can now in the form I am now, not in the way you want me to be. So that's where I think that grief can definitely become a time thief if we hold on to it excessively.
So just to put it another way, you're saying, like, if somebody dies, somebody close to you dies, a loved one dies, they're going to the afterlife and they don't want you to waste time on the guilt over what you may have not done or did. They don't want you to waste time on thinking too much about what they're missing now, right? Is that kind of what you're saying here?
Right. And I look at, I think we've talked about grief and that process, guilt, and atonement, and shame and atonement. And when we atone for something we feel guilty about, we find our at-one-ment. We can't often atone to the people we might feel guilt about the actions we may have committed. We can't really even sometimes atone to things in our own past for things we feel shame about. We can atone when we change our attitudes and behaviors into the future. So I might not have spent time with my dad or my mom or my lost loved one. We had the cancer episode with Laura, and we talked about that. Sorry, and some of the grief that people have felt about those losses. We can, though, change how we spend our time with our kids and our remaining parents and our friends and family. And I think that's where we can learn lessons through grief, through guilt, through shame, through failure, through stupid as we move forward.
Yeah. Now, I would say grief is an example of one that a lot of people would not say is an obvious time thief.
Right.
But it's good to be aware of that it can be, or that it is. So important stuff to think. Now, I want to bring up one here that is an obvious one, unlike grief, and that is social media. And I think you didn't maybe have that on your list, but you had the phone and the social media. The phone is the gateway to social media for most people.
It's the gateway drug.
Yeah. So I think it is a tremendous time thief. And I say that because for two reasons. One, sometimes when I spend time on social media, I cannot believe how much time elapses. It'll feel like 5 minutes and it's actually been 30 minutes or something. So there's that. And then there is what I know about how social media was developed and designed. And I mean, you can read up, people can read up on it. When these social media platforms were initially designed, they took strategies that are employed in casinos, that casinos use to give you a sense of timelessness, so that you don't know how long you're there for, so that you just sit at the slot machine longer, so you sit at a table longer and keep spending money, keep pumping money into their casino. And it's a very similar thing. Even when you look at the scroll, right? The act of scrolling is almost looks like a slot machine when you pull the lever and the thing spins and then it slows down and you get something. And I've heard it even described as, it's like kind of when you do the scroll, and this is due to the introduction of the infinite scroll, which has been around for a while now. But when you do that infinite scroll and the screen's reloading and you see your feed, everything in your feed go down, it's just like a slot machine. And
I love the term scrolling that's been adopted called doom scrolling, because it's really, it is kind of that feeling of after the time is lost, it's like, feels like, and people know they're going to get sucked into that scroll of doom, so to speak.
Yeah.
And see that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's, and the reason I say it is a thief is because I believe that the social media platforms, that they are designing it specifically to take away your time, because your time is a currency, right? They want it. The more time they have you, the more ads they can show you, the more money that can be made, and so forth. So I think of it as really a thief, because I do think they're trying to steal your time. Whereas like something like grief, I feel like it's not this entity that exists out there that's trying to take your time away from you. It's a more subtle form of a thievery. Grief.
Yeah. And again, I think those cultural attitudes towards those emotions feed that in this hierarchical world. People feel like I have to grieve this long. Some cultures even have that set up in advance. And I think it gives people time to grieve. We'll talk about that in that grief episode. But, I do think you're right about kind of that nature of, yes, we're going to have that demand characteristic of feeling certain emotions when we lose people in our lives, and to recognize the power of choice at some level to face and embrace those emotions rather than feel like they have power over us. Let them have power with us to learn and to grow and to see what we can really do to invest in life more. And I think one of the biggest things that those things we're talking about is not being fully present in relationships become a time thief,
Yeah. Okay. You got another one, or you want me to bring him?
I do.
Go for it.
I do. So my one is tomorrow. As we look at hopes and dreams, wishes that we never attempt, we look at, like I said, not being present, saying, I've got to do this. I'll be present with that person tomorrow. We'll do this later. I think, and I address that in the songs too, about that idea of later, as well as even in that idea of hopes and dreams that we don't attempt. And often that is about fear of failure. It's about, well, I don't really want to face that idea of what if I can't do it, and I want to do it, but if I don't if I don't play the game at all, I can't lose. And I think that's very dangerous to look at. And I think, again, if we really sit in the moment, sit with our emotions, and we really look at that idea of fear of failure, shame, guilt, where have we hidden our pains in the past that we're using as appraisals of our future and assessments, and should I move forward? And I've just, I've realized I have started a lot of things and that's helped me to learn my skill sets, whether that many more things that I wish I kind of would have put more effort into. Not I wish I kind of, but I wish I would have put more effort into to see how I could have succeeded and or not. But I knew I did a half-assed job at it, and I got half-assed results, frankly.
But I assume there was some sort of learning from that too, right?
There was. And I think in retrospect, it's about, did I really give it my all? And that's one thing I've really tried to teach my daughter. If you're going to do something, give it your best. If you can see the glory of failure, and you can see the glory of stupid, failure times X, and you can say, hey, I gave it my best and it didn't work out, great. But because we're taught, and almost it's hard when you feel failure and you feel stupid, it's hard not to have that demand characteristic of guilt and shame and inadequacy. If we just were able to teach these things culturally, the value of all these emotions, I think the number of time thieves that we have now, they would decrease, because people would truly be living more in the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about tomorrow, the future. I think a time thief can be the past. And I say that from not even a regretful view of the past, but even a happy view of the past. Like to me, when you asked me to jot some time thieves down, I thought reminiscing about the past. And so reminiscing about the good times and whatnot. And I remember a quote. This quote came from The Sopranos, actually, and it has stuck with me for many years. And the quote goes, "Remember when is the lowest form of dialogue." And so I want to get your opinion on this. That's always stuck with me. And I'm like, okay, because when I talk to people, I don't want to waste their time, right, with meaningless dialogue, meaningless conversation. Right. But I'm like, is that really true? And I think too much of it, certainly, right? But I feel like there is a shared camaraderie that that is healthy to discuss with your friends, your family at certain times. Even talking about grieving, like part of grieving is sharing about stories about somebody you may have lost, positive stories, that is. Mm-hmm. But what do you think? Is there a balance there that needs to be?
Dude, I love it. That is such an awesome, and you are dropping some serious truths from Jersey, man. Because I look at another Jersey boy, Bruce Springsteen, Glory Days. I think that is a classic song about, here, what is he doing in that song? He comes back and he sees these people who are totally living. What was it, the baseball or football star?
Yeah, baseball, the pitcher.
Baseball, yeah, and then the old girlfriend, I think, and and people that are stuck living in their past and glorifying their past to feel better about themselves in the present because they don't see a future. So I think that there is balance to that. I know one of the greatest things my parents did after my brother died is that they had all of his friends who wanted to come by the house, and we just told stories and we laughed. And it was okay to laugh. It was okay to be in that moment. And then I think we all cried. And even when I was 8 at the time and all his friends were 16 and 17, I am still friends and keep up with some of his friends on Facebook. I just went out to to Chipotle for lunch with one of his friends about 6 months ago. And I still, like I said, keep up on Facebook and phone calls. And one of his friends still comes to visit because those relationships have been enduring because of the connections that we made back then, the connections we made in his loss, and that became gains into the present and into the future that we couldn't realize. Why in those moments we seize those moments we have because we have this person that brought us together. So I absolutely think that in that, reminiscing on the past does give us common things to enjoy. I think we want to be aware of bringing up the losses again and again and again because that to me often justifies the continued pain, and rather than learning from the loss and integrating the growth. And that's one of the things I help people to do, is say, let's learn from this and then release the pain and integrate the growth, integrate what you've learned, the teachers from that pain, from that feeling of failure and stupidity.
So along with that, Dr. E, I notice, and I think you're an iPhone user too, and maybe Android users, anyone who's listening or watching, have this experience too. My iPhone will often, the photo app will often remind me of a period, or it'll create a slideshow of a time period in life, that's in the past. And I'm like, oh, I see that. I'll click on that, and I'll go through all the pictures, and there's my kids when they're 5 or 6 years old, how cute, and all that stuff. And then it throws me into a rabbit hole, and then I'm sitting there looking at pictures. Because I got like 5,000 pictures on my phone, and all of a sudden, 45 minutes just went by like that. Is that a time thief too? I feel like that could be a little bit of a time thief, but at the same time, it's not like I felt bad about the way I used that time.
So I absolutely think there's balance in that, in appreciating the times that and the memories. I think for brain health, I think it's really good to enhance those, reinnervate those neural pathways to reinvigorate those memories. Because I think if you don't use it, you lose it. I think that's part of it. The other part, I think, is that if we are scrolling too long, are there things we could be doing in the present? Can we look at those memories in the past to remind us of the things that we want to do in the present or in the future to create more positive memories? So I think we want to look at that and look at balance. But if we're living in those photos because we're caught in the grief and sadness of what we don't have, then we're not really going to be looking to anticipate what we can create in the future. So I guess my point here would be, use reminders of the past and photos to be more in the present, to then look to the future and bring those past, present, and future together to really bring more joy now and in what hasn't been experienced yet.
Now, Dr. E, the reason I say that's a time thief is because I feel like it's not always prompted by me, right? The phone generates this notification and says, look back at this memory. And so then I do, because I'm prompted to do so, right? It's not like I just opened up the photo app on my own thinking, oh, you know what? I want to go check out. I mean, sometimes I do that. I do that because I'm looking for something maybe or whatever. But it's that phone sort of exercising some command over my life and over everyone else's life. That's why I think it's a little bit of a thief, because it's just saying randomly at some point, it's just giving me this notification. It's like, oh, yeah, now I have to do what my phone says and look at this memory. You know what I mean?
Well, that has to do with the power you give your phone, the power you give technology, so.
Yeah, but it's hard not to, because who's going to not want to look at your kid when they're 6 or 7 years old, right?
Right. And then look at it. What I do when I see those is I look at the picture, I have the memory, and I move forward. I know that it brings me up all those picture collages and things.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll look at those depending on it. Once I do that, I make a point to be, okay, I'm done. And it's not disrespect to my daughter, my wife, my memories, my family. It's out of respect for, okay, I've got that. It filled me with this feeling. Now let me move invigorated potentially forward with this sense of joy, with this sense of happening, with these fond memories that I can take into my present and future.
Yeah, good point.
So, I think, and in that, what we're talking about, and I think we'll touch on this, bring this as our last time thief, because to me it is one of the most important things, is really about being present. And I touched on this before, but the presence in relationships, the importance of people in your lives. And are some people a weed, and are some people a treasure? I think we want to look at that, is that idea of what are we cultivating? And I think we want to look at that idea of, are we cultivating healthy relationships? Are we allowing ourselves to stay stuck in relationships that are really kind of weeds that take away from our presence, whether we're making judgment on others, or whether we're holding on to hate, or whether they're forecasting or projecting hate, inadequacy, fear onto us? It's not about being cruel to not want somebody in your life who you feel has contributed to pain. It's about either communicating with them and trying that to say, hey, if we want to move forward in life, can we move forward from this standpoint? If you can't let go of this, I'm having a difficult time moving forward because I recognize I made this choice, and I recognize you might have felt hurt by that. So be present in that moment to communicate what you wish to change. And sometimes people know and anticipate they're not going to accept that. I'd still say give an attempt at it. And if it doesn't work out, move forward. And move forward with quality relationships, because we have so many relationships in our world right now, in our media, in all these politics and things that are time thieves, and that focus on the fears of what hasn't happened and the beliefs in what happened in the past. And make change in the present. Love people in the present, and we'll bring a lot more people together.
Such a timely topic, Dr. E, for people to talk about. And it also, I would say, timeless. This is going to be an issue for people going forward into the future, no matter what happens with social media and how society continues to embrace it, or maybe eventually reject it more than we currently do. You're always going to have to make these choices about how to spend time. And it's good to have some strategies around that.
Yeah. And with that, I just recognized one of my lists that I was going to tie into is that idea of not being tactfully truthful. I think a lot of times we don't tell people things because we don't want to hurt their feelings. And we don't want that fear of rejection or that fear of their retaliation or reaction. And that to me is what has led us down to so many paths that have been time thieves, that we've lost time or we haven't seized the moment. That's a lot of my work with couples, is really teaching them to be tactfully truthful. I think we have to look at that in our system of families, of religion, of politics, of our jobs. And if we took that idea of being tactfully truthful and seeing ways we can work that in with all due respect, as is often said when people are trying to do that, and being tactfully receptive to that feedback, it would give us more quality relationships and more quality time in the present, with less fear of the future and less pain in the past.
Yes. Important advice, actually, for people to think about.
Absolutely. So I absolutely enjoyed our time. I'm happy to have you. I'm glad to have you back, Andrew. I look forward to moving forward and anticipating great things as we continue our journey on emotional algebra. So until next time.